Okay, welcome to today's class. I think we can get started. The rest will find us along the way. So, again, welcome to the class. I think my mic was on mute. So, we can get started. The rest can be able to find us somewhere along the way because we are also out of time. I hope you can hear me. Just confirm for me if you can be able to hear me. Thank you, Henry. If you can hear me, that is good. So I think we looked at HTML the past three classes, and we tried to be as exhaustive as possible as far as is concerned. Again, we might not have looked at everything, but I think what we have covered should be able to allow us to be able to carry on with this visual programming thing that we're trying to do. Now, um, sorry, I think I've lost my connection for some reason. Let me just find out. Yeah, as I was saying, sorry, I lost my connection for some reason, but I think it's back now, so we can carry on. Um, I don't know why my connection is very shaky today. Uh, I think my connection is a bit good. Okay, so I'll share my screen, and today's topic is all about CSS or cascaded style sheets. So previously we looked at HTML and we said HTML is used as a building block. It is what helped us to build the components that you're going to see on our application. So we can create forms, you can create uh, paragraphs, you can create divisions, you can create navigation, you can add images, we can add lists and tables, and we can do so many other things with CSS just for purposes of outputting or publishing content. But HTML was not meant for styling, which means that if you wanted to do a bit of styling for your application or your website, then it meant that you have to repeat this process for each and every page, making the pages very bulky, expensive, and very, very difficult to achieve. And that's where now CSS now comes into play. It helps us in being able to format how some of these pages so that it is easier. Gerard, you're asking me to share my screen. Okay, is it visible now? Gerard, is it visible now?
Yeah, now I'm seeing you are starting, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, as I was saying, CSS is all about styling our pages and the contents of the page. So, it's going to be an interactive session. We're going to have just maybe at most three classes on CSS because it's also a bit wide, so that now we can start focusing on JavaScript. And I hope you had also discussed that we're going to have classes on Saturday, two classes on Saturday of 2 hours each, 2 hours break, 2 hours then, so that you can be able to at least complete this syllabus on time. Because I'm seeing the timetable, the way it has been set, it is put on 7th, and we might not have any additional time before then. So you will be forced to sacrifice the next 3 Saturdays so that now we are able to cover these things in totality. So that is something that you just need to bear in mind. Now, that's a small deviation. Let's come back to CSS. CSS in full means cascaded style sheets. So let me just open Visual Studio, our code editor. So I will also open our project, recent. Mm, where was it? It's supposed to be called Visual Programming. Okay. Yeah. So today we want to look at cascaded style sheet. So I'll introduce a file here and I call it intro CSS intro. Well, let me just use text file because I want to what have I just called it? CSS intro. Okay, that's strange. Let's just say CSS intro dot. Well, okay, it has created it, so it's a text file. So we said CSS in full means cascaded style sheets. That's what it means in full. And cascaded means that you can apply CSS in multiple layers, and the layer that you put last is the one that is affected. Now, with that in mind, it means that there is basically an order within which CSS works on. And the first order, the one that is given the highest priority, so the order of priority, and I will explain this with examples, is first of all, inline styles are given priority. Then after inline styles, then we also have now the other category I think is called internal style. We'll see how each of them works. Internal plus external styles. Then from internal or external styles, we'll have um, classes, then ID. So whenever you give something a class or an ID, it will take precedence. This will be given precedence. So if I have both class and ID, the ID will take precedence. If I have classes only, the class will take precedence. If I have internal or externally attached documents of CSS, then they'll take the second priority. Then actually this should be the second one. Yeah, it should be that way, because we'll have inline styles that are taking precedence, then any classes or IDs that have been applied, and of course these ones will either come from internal or external documents. So that's how the cascade really works. Now, this is important because by default, each and every browser comes with their own styling. So I'll give us an example. Let's do something like a new file here, and we say css one.html. Then I'll put image here. Then I'll say css introduction. I said you should come in quietly by accepting the link. I really hate it when we have started, then some people are trying to come in. Just accept the invitation and come in quietly. I think that way it makes much more sense. So, as I was saying, each and every browser comes with their own style. Let me say something like, for example, I want to put div over here. I want to put an input of type text like that, and don't give it a name and ID. Then let me also put another input here, another select. And for this select, I won't give it a name, but I'll give it two options. I'll just one option. Then I'll say choose. Sorry, lesser than, choose, and greater than. Now we have learned this before. This is not something strange. What I want to show us is exactly how it works out in different browsers and how it appears on those different browsers. So I'll go live with this. It will start on Chrome, of course. So you can see how it looks like on Chrome. Well, maybe let me put labels. I think I can have it left or right, like that. So we have it on the left hand side here. So what I'll do is probably just put a label here, and this label will be for well, maybe say first name. Then I can put a break here, put another label. Then probably, well, I can hide this so that you're able to see the entire code. Then I can put another label here and say this is for gender. So if I ask you for your name and your gender, this is how it appears on the Chrome. And I want us to open um, the same path in maybe say Edge, Microsoft Edge. So we'll paste it inside here. Press enter. Well, not so much of a difference, but you can clearly see. Let me put something like a text area because that then we would be able to see the difference because I know scroll bars are different. So I'll put another break, then label and say text area. I mean, tell us about yourself, about yourself, something of the sort. So I'll put a text area here. Um, and probably I'll say rows are 30 and columns are 20. Well, that's too big. Even this one is still not giving me scroll bars. I wanted something that gives me scroll bars. But well, I think we'll get to that. My point was if you view these things on each and every browser applies their own style. Now, I know here I'm not going to see the difference because most probably the V8 the V8 engine the V8 engine from Chrome is the one that is also used by Microsoft. So more or less, the internal styles they're not 100% similar, but you'll find that they are almost similar. Like for example, if I look at this background gender and I come back and look at this background yeah, I think they are more or less no, this is still Edge. I wanted to go to Chrome. You can see the background colors are different. Here it is blue. When I go to Edge, it is now gray. So it means that the browser has applied its own styles in the absence of any styling that we ought to have put in place. Let me just admit those who are trying to come in. Um, are there people trying to come in? Um, or they've been admitted? Okay, looks like they've been admitted. That's fine. So what I was saying is that every time you apply styles, if every time you launch your documents or your pages on a browser, if you don't provide any form of styling, then it means that the browser will apply its own styles. So again, that is how CSS works now. So as we were looking at the hierarchy of the styles, so we have the browser taking the list, browser inbuilt styles. So as you are looking at styling, that is how the precedence is going to take place. In the absence of all these others, the browser will apply its own styles. So in terms of text, in terms of fonts, in terms of spacing, in terms of background, and so forth and so forth, each and every browser has its own styling attributes. And that's why when we are creating our pages or our documents, we want to be explicit about styles. So that is the order. So that's what CSS is, and that is the order of priority on how those styles are applied. So moving forward, let's look at how we can add CSS to our page. So I'll just go ahead and comment on these elements that I've put, and I want to make it very very simple. Let me just say I have a H1 here, and welcome to CSS. And probably I have maybe a paragraph here and say hello My name is Donald Duck. Something of the sort. Now, nothing new here. This is what we are used to in terms of outputting the content. So let's say, for example, we wanted to maybe say change the font color for welcome, the color for welcome to be something like blue. Right now it's black. Now we said we have, first of all, the inline styles, which means they are the styles that are applied on the on the content internally. So for the inline styles, we'll take the element and we'll apply a style attribute here. Then the style attribute, we'll put it in double quotation marks. Then inside the style, we'll simply put a property and a value. That is how CSS is constructed. So with CSS, we have what we call property, what you want to change, value, what you want to change it to. So property full colon value. So the property is what you are selecting, what you want to change. Then the value is what you want to give that particular property. It could be color, it could be font, it could be border, it could be opacity, it could be several other things as we are going to look at this moving forward. But in a nutshell, for us to apply any CSS property, it has to be property. For us to apply any style, it will be property and value. So if I wanted to change this to have maybe say a blue background, or maybe say even the color to be the color, which means the color of the text. Background is what is at the back. Color is what you are seeing, the stroke for the text. So let me say I want to change the color to blue. So I'll say color. Color in English, color is English. I mean US English, not UK English. It's not with like that. It's not color like that. It is color like that. Then full colon. Then I can say blue. So when I do that, you see automatically this one changes to blue. The color of this changes to blue. So this is an example of an inline style. So I've taken this style and applied it to H1 directly. If I wanted the paragraph to have a yellow background, so I'll come here and say style background. It can be background or background color, depends on, and you're going to see the difference between those ones as we're going to look at the background later on. So I'll say background. I don't like using background color, so I'll just use background. Then I'll give it something like gray, right? So if I do that, you see that has now a gray background. So these are inline styles. So I'm taking an element, then I'm applying style to it directly. That overrides any other style that I might have put as far as the CSS is concerned. So if I had put an external an external style or as an internal style with classes and IDs, then I put that inline style. This one will take precedence amongst all the other prefixes that are going to be there. That's why this hierarchy was very, very important. Sometimes you apply your styles and you see like they have not taken effect. It's because they have been overwritten by other styles based on this hierarchy that we're looking at here. So this is how inline styles work. All right. So let's look at how internal styles work. Now, this is not very scalable, and this is how it was being done before. So you can see if I was to format each and every element on my page, it means I have to go through everything and apply styles to them. Not very user friendly, not very convenient, very difficult to update. Say, for example, if I was to change the color of a text from blue to black and I have like 40 headings, I'll have to repeat that process 40 times. Not very, very convenient, but it is what was being done back in the day, and it's still available for us today in the event that I want just to format one very specific component as far as my content is concerned. Okay, so now let's come and look at what we call inline, what we call internal or external styles. So for internal or external styles, I'll start with internal styles. So I'll mask this. Well, maybe I'll just put another head one. So this is internal styles. So I'll put a paragraph here. Internal styles are added in the head of the document. Now, whenever you want to apply internal styles, you'll come to the head of the document up here, inside the head here. This is where you'll define your style. So inside the head, after you've put your meta and all that, you can come down here and put a style element. Then you can apply all your styles inside here. So for the styles that I want to apply here, I want to give this heading 1 a green color. So if I want to give this heading 1 a green color, I'll come and say heading 1, which is my selector. Then I can come and say give it a color of green. So you can see the style is the whole idea is the same. So I have the property and the value. Similarly here I had property and value, so that never changes. What changes is how we apply. So here we're going to look at selectors. Don't worry, I've said go to the document, pick all heading ones and apply green color, and this is where it's going to be interesting. Now if I put another heading 1 here, semantically this is wrong, so this is the second heading. So you'll see that if once I'm done with that, that heading is also green in color. I didn't need to tell it green. If I was using the internal styles, I would have needed to go through each and every heading and give them the green color. This particular format in this particular implementation, just saying heading 1, give it a green color, it will go through the entire document, getting heading 1s and applying the green color to them. So if I have a paragraph here and I say, this is awesome, and for some reason I want all the paragraphs to have red text, so I can come here and say all the paragraphs make their color red. So you'll see that all the paragraphs will have red color automatically. So this is now starting to become scalable, because you can see at the end of the day I only need to define the style, define my my CSS properties, then the browser will automatically just go through the entire DOM or document object model and apply those styles as they've been put on the header here. Now this is starting to become a bit scalable. Now the only challenge with this again is that you have to repeat this for each and every page that you create, which sometimes is not very friendly if you have a large application or a website. And that's where now we come to now the third option, which is the external styles, these external styles over here. So these external styles will help us now to be able to to be able to now use one style sheet for multiple pages. So I can just create one style sheet for my entire website and I load it on top of each and every page. Then that way, now I don't need to repeat myself as far as these styles are concerned for each and every page. Again, this one is starting to become a little bit more scalable than the inbuilt styles, but then as I've said, you have to repeat it at the top of each and every page, which might make it a little bit difficult to maintain if the website is or the web application is a bit light. So let's look at the third option, which is now external style sheet. Now for an external style sheet, what you'll need to do is you will create, usually I create a folder and I call it CSS. Then inside that folder called CSS, I create a document and I call it style.css. So this style.css is where all my CSS styles are going to go. So what I'm going to do here, inside my style.css, I'll come again and say heading 1. I want to give them background of gray. And for paragraphs 1, for paragraphs, I want to give them a color of pink, right? Something of the sort. Now, I have created this file separately. I have added all the styles on this file. Now, I have CSS1 over here, and I want to come and comment on this. So I'll comment on this. Now, if I come back to my page, there's no styling that's been applied to them, right? But I have the styles here. I was expecting that the background for heading 1, this background to be gray, and this background also to be gray. I was expecting this font to be pink. Actually, let me make that font dark blue. I am expecting these fonts to be dark blue for the paragraphs, but they're not applying. They're not applying simply because I have not linked this style sheet with this file. So how do we do that? Here at the head, I'll come and say link. Let me just write it in full. I'll say link like that. And as you can see, it automatically tries to complete for me. So it says link The relationship is style sheet, and the file that I'm referring to is style.css. So I have style.css, and why it has not picked, I have no idea. Let me just refresh that. It should have picked that. Let me see. So heading one, background okay. Let me see. That should have worked because the link is already there. So let me just find out what could have been an issue. On my console, it is saying it refused to apply that. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes these won't work. So if I just went ahead and opened the file directly, like let me just close this, and I'll come to where I've stored these files. It's called on my root C. We have visual programming. Then inside visual programming, no, I think it is actually okay. What I missed out on was I think it was actually okay. I messed up a bit when I'm applying this style. I didn't say exactly where it is. These two files are not in the same directory, so you can see css.html and style.css are not in the same folder. I need to move into the css folder. That's why I find the style. So I'll come here and I'll say css slash. Then if I now go live here, that should have picked because let me check that it has actually loaded. So console, it's saying mm, well, I think this this extension has an issue with the MIME type because it only expects text or HTML, not an issue. As I said, we could also just go into where the application is, and we say css1.html and click it, double click on it. Check here. What's the issue? Console styles.css. It's actually style, not styles. So that's another mistake that I had made. It's supposed to be style, not styles. So here I also messed up. It's supposed to be style and not styles. So now you can see it has actually applied those particular elements. So it is me who was actually confusing the browser by not giving it where the file is located. So as you can see, when I put the link and I put the relationship is style sheet, and I put the hyperlink reference, which is go to a folder called CSS, then look for a file called style.css, take whatever is there and inject on this particular page. That is similar to just typing style and taking whatever is in this document and outputting it inside here. So that's what this particular declaration here does. It simply opens this, goes to this folder because of specified a folder. So from where this file is, look for a folder called CSS, then open a file called style.css, then take whatever is there and inject it down here. So it's going to output something similar to this, and that now applies to the entire page. Now you can see this is very easy because simply copying this line on top of each and every page simply allows me to apply my styles throughout my entire website or application, right? So you can see now the external style is the most preferred because it is very easy to maintain and you can easily change everything on your entire website. Let me just give you an example. Like let me introduce another file here and call it css2.html. Then let me have emet again. Then I'll simply close this and I'll say this one is css2. I'll come here and put my heading 1 and say welcome to our homepage. Now, if I come here and I put a link to CSS, and I apply that, you can see it automatically put style sheet. Then, of course, it assumes my document is called style, but it's inside a folder called CSS. So I'll just correct that. So CSS slash style. So that allows me to be able to access that. Now, if I was to open this CSS2 here, you can see the style has also applied. So any styles that are applied on this document, every time I refer to that particular document as my style sheet document, all the elements that are targeted by the styles defined here will take effect. So it makes it very, very easy for me to update my website or web application as far as looks are concerned. So I can have consistent look and feel across my entire application without any problems. Okay. Now, this is getting interesting, and that's basically how we use CSS. Any question up to that point? Um, Even says the href has to come first. I don't think so. You can put it in any order. They are attributes, and attributes don't necessarily have to follow any particular order, as long as all of them are available. All right. So what usually matters a lot is basically you defining all of them. So when the browser is loading them, so long as all of them are available, the order is not necessarily very, very important. Okay. Any other question or concern? That is how we use CSS, and that's very important. Inline styles, external or internal styles, classes, IDs, then then we have the browser implemented styles. So it will take that order. If you don't provide any, the browser will try to use its own. If you provide an internal style, the browser will use the internal style. If you provide an inbuilt style rather, it will use that. Then inline rather, if you use an inline style, it will use that. If you provide an internal or an external style, it will also use that. So it will all depend on how you want to do it. But I will tell you the most preferred ways is using external style sheets. And then from external style sheets, now we're going to look at what we call selectors. And these selectors are the heartbeat of CSS. Once you master the selectors, the other things like properties are basically just walk in the park. Selectors are what makes the difference as far as using CSS is concerned. So, on that note, let's look at selectors. So, remember, when you're talking about CSS, we said CSS takes this particular syntax. So, this is the syntax for CSS. Make sure you master this. So, we have property, we have a property that you want to change. Of course, we have a selector first of all. We have a selector, selector. Then after selector, we have a curly bracket. Then you have a property, then a value. This is the structure of any CSS code that you're going to use. Put your selector, put your property, put your value. Now, you can have property and value, and you can have multiple properties and value. It doesn't have to be one. So if you have multiple properties and value, simply separate them by a full colon. Then you can have another property, another value, and so on and so on. Another property, another value, but you make sure you separate them by a semicolon. Now, the last one is optional. The last one, you can leave it optional. I don't know why my connection is a bit shaky today. For some strange reason, my connection is very shaky today. I don't understand why. But nonetheless, this is being recorded, so hopefully that should take care of those other problems that are arising. So just kindly bear with me. All right. So I was discussing the. I'm seeing somebody here wants to join the meeting. I'm not seeing this person wants to join. This person wants to join. Where are they? Well, I think probably maybe that was some times back. So let's just get back to our business. So we were discussing selectors. Now, when it comes to CSS, we have different types of selectors. I think there are six in total, if not seven. We have six types of CSS selectors. And I want you to pay very, very keen attention to how these selectors work because they make or break how the application works. So, what is a selector? So, a selector, by definition, selector, I would define it as maybe things that we use to select elements to be styled. So, they are used to select elements to be styled. So, this is how you select elements to be styled. How to select elements to be styled is what we call a selector. So every time you want to format anything, you have to select it. If you come here, I'm saying heading one, I'm saying paragraph. But these are very simple selectors and they're referred to as element selectors, which is one of the selectors that we use. So the first type of selector we have are the simple selectors. So we have simple selectors. So these simple selectors are things like element selectors, element element selectors. So you select an element, and of course, uh, it allows you to be able to manipulate that element. You have class selectors, we have ID selectors. Among simple selectors, we have name selectors, and so forth and so forth. So I'm going to show us how to use all these simple selectors. So we can use element selectors, we can use class selectors, we can use ID selector, we can use name selectors, and so on and so on. So we can use any of these four. This is not all of them, but ideally, once we learn how to use these four, the rest should just fall into place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show us how to first of all use element selectors, which is what we have done so far. Now, for ease of navigation, I'm going to use internal CSS documents. So it means I'm going to define my styles at the top of the page so that I don't have to move back and forth from page to page or from document to document. But ideally, it will be advisable for me to put them in a separate external sheet, then import that external sheet on the head of my document. That is how we do it best. But for purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use the internal style just to make sure that everything is in one document, so to speak. All right. So just bear with me on that. Now, that's not the best practice, but for purposes of this explanation, that is what I am going to use. So I'll create a file here and I'll say simple selectors dot selectors dot css, not css but html. The document is html. Then inside my html, I'll just close that because I already have the document. I'll initiate emmet and I'll say this is simple selectors. Right? So on simple selectors, we said let's start with element selectors. Now, element selectors is what we have done before. You select elements. Maybe say I want to apply. I want to take. I want to create something like uh, like 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 a navigation menu. So in the navigation menu, we said we can have navigation here like that. Then inside that navigation, I can have things like that, right? So let me dispose of this. Then I go live on this one so that it replaces the page over here. Yeah. So here you can see I have all these anchor elements. Now I have navigation here. I have anchor elements. I can have heading one over here, and I'll say welcome to UK, right? Then I can have a paragraph here, and this paragraph I can say Lorem 50. To output some text for me like that. Then I have my navigation. You get the whole idea, right? So I have element h1, element paragraph, I have nav, I have anchor, and so forth and so forth. So I have different elements here. So let's look at how these ones work. Now, again, inside these particular things, I could say things like I have another list. So UL here with an ID of courses. So here I'll have list items, 4 of them. Then I'll have the IT. Sorry, I have the CT. I have CCIT and I have CIT. Things like those one, right? Of course, this one has to come after navigation. And maybe I can have, this is a hot course. So I'll put here a class of hot or popular course. Let me not call them hot, but popular course, right? So that's a popular course. And maybe this last one is also a popular course. Then here I can have join our mailing list. So I have something like maybe say paragraph or H2. Then say join our mailing list. Uh, wow, that is strange. What is just okay? DIT then. This is a bit strange. I wasn't expecting that output to look like that, but I think let me just refresh it. Yeah, I think there's some program at the back was trying to inject something here, but that's what we are. So joining our mailing list here, I can have an input here of type text, input of type text, then with an ID of join us, something like that. I can give them a name of join us. Then I can have here a pattern of ID uh, register. Register. So register now. Something of this sort. So we have a very elaborate web page over here. It has a few elements. There's a UL with ID of courses. Then we also have H2, we have H1s, we have paragraphs, we have navigation, and so forth and so forth. So when you're talking about simple selectors, let's of all first start with talking about elements. Okay, so let's talk about. I'll put a comment here and I'll say first of all, before I even do anything else, that's how we put CSS comments, by the way. That's how we put CSS comments. So what I'll do here, I'll create a style. Then all my styles are going to go inside here, right? So um, that's not necessary. Yeah. So all my styles are going to go here. So I'll start by putting what we call, and you can see now the comments have changed. This is how comments in CSS start, and this is how comments in CSS ends. Comment in HTML look like that. Sorry, look like that. So that this is comments in HTML, these are comments in CSS. So that's the difference between the two of them. So inside here, now we're going to say style, not style, but let me say element selectors. Element selectors like that. So for us to select any element, I want us to target all anchor elements, and I want us to remove these styling that they have. So I want the text decoration I want to remove the underline for all this text decoration. So you can see when I do that and I say, get me all the anchor elements, A means all the anchor elements. So this A means get all the anchor elements. Then from the anchor elements, I'll say text decoration is none. So that should remove all the underlines. As you can see on my page, all the underlines have been removed. Okay. Now, if I wanted to change the color of the fonts to be maybe say green, so I'll say color here should be green. So you'll see that all my maybe let me just expand this. You'll see that all my anchor elements are now in green, and that's a good thing because if I was to add others here, like contact us, I have another page called about us, and so forth and so forth. You'll see that all of them simply have now the text decoration removed. So in short, they don't have the underline, which is the default, and the color has been changed to green. I can even go ahead and maybe change the font name if I wanted to change the text decoration to maybe say something like uppercase or lowercase or something like that. And I'm now able to do all those kind of things. But the most important thing is I'm using the anchor element to select all the anchors on my page and change and remove any styling that they have and change them to green color. So even if I went ahead and added something here, like visit google.com, down here, I'll simply come here and say visit google.com. Then here I'll simply say https www.google.com. You will see that if I come here, this is already in green, right? So this is already in green, just like all the anchor elements. So it makes it very, very easy for me to target all the anchor elements and apply the appropriate styles or properties that I want to put on them. So that's how anchor elements work. You can pick, and it's a simple selector like picking an anchor. Now, let's say, for example, I want to pick maybe something that has a name. What has a name? Now, let me just use the anchor. This navigation first of all. So in this navigation, I want to go to this navigation and change the background for that navigation. So when I come here, I'll simply say, take my navigation and make the background maybe something like sky blue. So you can see now my navigation here has been given a background style of sky blue. I might want to say maybe it is a bit too tight. Leave some spacing on that. We're going to look at that later. So I'll simply say padding of 10 pixels all round, maybe say 20 pixels all round. So you'll see it leaves a bit of spacing as far as the text and the content is concerned. So again, you can see just by targeting the nav element itself, I'm able to apply styles as appropriate. I can even go further and say for every paragraph, maybe change the text to red. So I can come here and say for every paragraph, change the text is color to red. So every time you have a paragraph, all the paragraphs will have a red color as far as your document is concerned. Now, this is example of how element selectors work. So it's also a simple selector. Now, let's look at name selectors. So name selector. So when you are defining the name of an object, though technically I don't use name selectors. Let me actually use ID selectors. Let me use ID selectors. So when you want to use an ID selector, I can have several inputs. Like for example, here I have join us, and you have to put your email there, right? Then I can maybe ask you for your name. So I'll simply say here placeholder So enter your email. Yeah, that's okay. Then maybe say I have another break here. Sorry, and I put another input of type text still with an ID of your name. So usually I have my name and ID to be the same. Then I'll have a placeholder here. Enter your name. Enter your name. Now, this is the problem I want you to look at. Let's say, for example, I want to make this one green in color and this one red in color. So the text of this one to be green and the text of this one to be red. Now, what I'll be tempted to do is all of them are input, as you can see. So there's an input of join us, another input of your name. So if I come up here and I said any input, sorry, make the color, let me say red is very screaming, so red will always be visible. So when I come here and I start typing, you can see the color of that is red. The only problem is the color of this one is also red because I'm saying so long as it is an input. But what if I wanted to change only one input? Maybe say I want to change join us. So using the ID, I can target join us only to be red and your name to be green. So this is how you do it. So instead of this, and by the way, I want to show you how now CSS applies. You can see at the top here, I have taken an input and I've applied color red. Let me go downwards and I say, get me something with an ID of join us and make the color blue. Now you can see all inputs are supposed to be red by default, isn't it? But I'm saying after all inputs have become red, then get something with an ID of join us and make it blue. So when I come here now and I start typing, now you can see that one is blue, even though I said all inputs are red. And that's how CSS works. It's going to trickle from top to bottom, but anything that has an ID or a class or all of that will be given preference. So this join us, because it's more specific than an input, it will be able to override the input that I have over here. All other inputs are going to remain red, but any input with join us now becomes blue. Now this is not necessary. I just wanted to use it to show you how now the styling scales downwards. So this is an example of an ID selector. Let's go again and say your name. We now want it to be green. So color green. So you can see now here when I started to type, now it becomes green. Don't worry about these other colors these other styles that it has applied. I was only concerned with the green. So when I start typing here, now you can see now that becomes green and this one becomes blue. So ID selectors will now specifically target a specific element that has these IDs. Okay, good. Now let's look at now the class selectors. The class selectors, they're also simple selectors. So we also have here class selectors. So for the class selectors, ID we're using hash, element name we're using the element name itself, then the class name we use a dot. Now assuming we have paragraph, this paragraph here is red. Let me say I have another paragraph here about notices. So we come down here and put another H2, then say notices, notice. Then I'll simply come here and say paragraph with a class of notice. Then this paragraph, I'll simply say lorem 30, just some random text. So this, you can see here, all of them are going to become red because I have said on my styling here, any paragraph should be colored red. So every time I add a paragraph, it will become red. But if I wanted to color this paragraph, maybe say something like maroon, I would simply come here and now say dot, then I put the class name, then I put color, maybe something like maroon. So you'll see that this one is now maroon and this one is now red. And if I was to introduce another paragraph with maroon also, so I can simply say another paragraph here with a class of notice, and I'll say all applicants for June courses. So something like that. So you can see again here, these two paragraphs, because they have a class of notice, they will have the same style. So this is one paragraph, this is also another paragraph, but because all of them have a class called notice, and they have said anything that has a class of notice, change it to maroon. So classes are how you group things together. They form something. They have a similar subject of some sort. So you want to style them together. So that is how you apply style. So for you apply classes. So class you use a dot, then the name of the class. ID you use hash, the name of the class. Name, if you wanted to use a name, you'd use an attribute. Name is an attribute, so you simply put any thing with the name that is equals to this, then you should be able to apply that. But then again, we don't use names so much. We simply use IDs and classes. Okay, so these are examples of simple selectors. Any question? I said selectors are the heartbeat of CSS. If you know how to use selectors, you can pick anything on your page and style it however you want. We're going to look at the different stylings before, sorry, later. But for now, I'm simply focusing on exactly how to, select these things so that I can be able to apply styles to them as appropriate. All right. So that is the first category of selectors. They are called simple selectors. Now, the other category of selectors in CSS is what we call combinator selectors. There are four in total. So let's start with the first one, which is descendant. And for the descendant, we use space. I'll explain what it is. So simple selectors, you use the element, class, ID, name, very simple things, straightforward, and you are good to go. So here I'll come and say, create another file and call it combinator selectors. Selectors.html. I'll close that. I'll discard that. I will launch it back. I'll put emmet and I'll put combinator selector. Combinator selectors. So the first one we said is descendant. So I'll simply say here types of combinator selectors. Uh, Maybe this is H2. Then type of combinator selectors. Yeah, I think that should be able to output it. Now for this type of combinator selectors, the first one we have is one is descendant, and it has even given me an example here. But thank you, Emmett. Thank you, Copilot, for that. So, an example is if descendant is I want to select anything that is a descendant, either a child or a grandchild of something. So, let me give you an example here. It has given me an example there that looks nice, but not very practical. Let me put it like this. Let me say I have a div or I have a navigation. Let me say just a div, and this div has a paragraph. Okay, this div has an input, which is text, and I'll say your email address. Okay, And this div also has a heading 2. And of course, this heading 2, this is an example. And we can go on and on and on. Now, this inside this div, I might want to target all the children. This is the child of this div. This is also a child of this div. This is also a child of this div. And if this was a paragraph inside here, like that, this is the grandchild of this. So this is the parent, child, child also, then grandchild. I hope you're seeing how I'm moving. So I have this div here. This div here is the parent. So this paragraph, I can say this is the first child. All right. So this is the first child of this development. So this is a child. That's how the DOM works. Then this is also a child. So this is also a child. Now this one here, this one is a child. This is a child. Sorry. Now this is a grandchild. Okay. So if you look at that hierarchy, I have div here is the parent. This is a child of this div. This is also a child of this div. This is also a child of this div. This is a grandchild of this div. So when you're talking about descendants, we're talking about this div and anything that is an offspring to it, whether they are a child, a grandchild, a great grandchild, and so forth and so forth. So if I target this div and its descendant, it means anything that is inside it. Let me give you a classic example. If I wanted to format the paragraphs inside the div, so this is a direct child, this is a great grandchild. Now, if I had another paragraph here and say this paragraph is outside the div. I want to format only the paragraphs inside this particular div and not any other paragraph on the page, right? So this first one here will not be formatted. This will be formatted, and this one will also be formatted. This one will not be formatted because it is outside the div. That's what the descendant is all about. You pick an element and all the offsprings for that particular element, that is what the descendant combinator will do. So let's come up here and do that selector and see how it works out. So I'll put here style. So I'll put get me a div. Of course, usually I give them an ID because divs are going to be so many. So in practice, I'll give this div an ID. So div, I'll say my first div. You can call it anything. Of course, we give them appropriate names depending on the content. Maybe it could be my hero section, it could be my carousel, it could be my courses, whatever it is that it is. So up here, I'll simply say I can use the element selector. Then I put a space. When I put a space, then I put a paragraph. So it means that what I'm doing here is go to the document, get me a div, then get me all the descendants that are paragraphs. So you see this space, then P. So get me a div, space, descendants, all paragraphs. So anything that is inside a div that is a paragraph, select it. That's what that statement means. Now, once you select that, let me change their color to red. So I'll simply say here, color is red. And I want you to observe what happens. So you can see that uh, only two of them have changed. Now I have a paragraph here, but this paragraph, as you can see, is not inside the div because I've said get me a div. Yeah. Then get me all the descendants of the div. So long as you're a descendant of the div and you're a paragraph, so it's going to come to this div, it will pick this paragraph, the content in it, which is this child, format it to red, go down H2. I have another paragraph. This is still a descendant because H2 is a child of the div, but the paragraph is the child of H2 and the grandchild of the div. So it is also a descendant. So that descendant will mean pick an element and anything that matches that element that is a direct descendant. And as you can see, the one on the outside has not been formatted because it is not inside the div. But if I was to move it inside here, inside the div, then you can see it also gets the styling because at this point now it is inside the div and so it is a descendant. Okay, makes sense? I hope so. Now, as I said, the selectors are going to play a very important role in how you are going to be working with your CSS. So that's descendant. How about now the second one is child selectors. Um, and it's bright enough. I saw it's trying to do, yeah. So child selectors are now the direct children. Now, as I was mentioning here, this is a child, this is a grandchild. Now, if I wanted to apply direct children, it means I only want to take div and its direct child. This is the direct child, this is a grandchild. So if I want to take the direct child and omit any other element, then I'll use the child selector. Okay. So for the child selector, so this one here is descendant selector. I'll mask it. Now I want to use child selector. So for child selector rather, for child selector we're going to use a plus. So for child selector, not plus but greater than, sorry. For child we're going to use greater than. So for child selector you can see it's done that. So I'll pick a div, then I'll put greater than and I'll put maybe a paragraph. Then here I want the color to be purple. Like that. So if you look at that, only this particular, okay, maybe let me let me make it red so that it's screaming. So with that one, you're going to see it will pick a div and only the direct child who is a paragraph. So if I come to this div, the paragraph that is a direct child only. So this div, then any paragraph that follows it. So if I had another paragraph down here, be here, and say another paragraph, you can see it's only going to select those two. So it's only going to select this one and this other one, even though this one is also a paragraph, but now that is a child, grandchild, not a direct child. So if I'm talking about a direct child, I'll use the greater than sign. So greater than sign means direct child. Space means any descendant. They can be child, they can be grandchild, they can be great great grandchild, so long as they are within that particular element that you have selected. Okay, so that's the second one, direct child. Then you also have the third one, which is now the next sibling. So the third one is next sibling. Next sibling is like your brother, right? Next sibling is like your brother. So you see, the body has H2. H2 is a child. So H2 and the paragraph, this paragraph, they are brothers. H2 paragraph and this div, they are brothers. H2 paragraph, this div, and this paragraph, they're also brothers. So this and this and this are all brothers because the parent is the body, right? So if I say I want the body and I want, maybe say if I want, maybe say I say maybe I'm talking about this heading 2. Then this heading 2, I want the direct brother of heading 2, which is now this paragraph over here. So it means that I want to target this paragraph over here. So it means that I have to select this H2, then I select this next sibling, next sibling. So I'll have to reach this element, then the next sibling, which means the next element that is next to it, which is this particular component over here. So if this H2 was maybe say ID, my heading, like that, I can come up here because I want to change this one to have a yellow background. I can come here and say next sibling. next, not nest, but next sibling. So for this next sibling, I want to simply put it like so I'll pick a div with an ID of my heading, but it can still be a simple heading selector. Then next sibling, I'll use plus. Okay, then I'll say next sibling, get me a paragraph. Now that paragraph, so go and look for something that has an ID of my heading, then get the brother, the next sibling, who is a paragraph. So it means I'll come here, I'll get this. So once I pick this, the next sibling is this paragraph here. So next sibling, there's a paragraph. By the way, there could be so many siblings here. I can have an image here that has a source of images, and I can say something like maybe say images. Then here maybe what do we have inside here? I can have management team like that. So I have this image over there. So this paragraph is a sibling to this. This image is also a sibling to this, and all of them are following it, right? So it means that once I reach here, the next siblings are these two. All right. So if I want the next sibling who is a paragraph, so I'll mention the next sibling who is a paragraph. So it means it's going to select this. Then what do I want to do? I want to maybe say change the background to green. Green. So you can see now it has changed the background. This one is this is the only paragraph that has changed because what it has done, sorry, what it has done is it has gone and picked this, then now pick the next sibling that's a paragraph. Now if I told you to pick the next paragraph that is an image, so I can still come here. Well, I can use H2, then get me img, then make the border. Let me change the border radius. Sorry, I want to make it a circle. So border radius 50%. Border radius, is it 50%? Can I change an border radius for IMG? Yes, I should be able to change the border radius for image. Let me say border 1 pixel solid red. It's not picking this image. I don't know why. It's not picking that image. That image is a direct child, direct brother rather. Yeah, it won't work because it's supposed to pick the next child. That is the first one. So if I removed that, that should be able to work out. So you can see now it has applied. Actually, even the border radius I was looking for would just be able to work. So border radius. So there has to be a semicolon here. We said all styles are separated by semicolon. So border radius of 50%. That should make it a circle. Yeah, so you can see it's almost circle. Now it's oval because the image was not square. Otherwise, if it was square, it would have been a perfect circle. But you get my idea. So pick an element. Then when you put a plus, it means the next sibling, something that follows it directly. That is how this works out. Then what if I want subsequent siblings? So we have now subsequent siblings. Subsequent siblings means that any sibling, not just the next one, but anything that follows H2. Like if I return this one like that, you'll see that these styles will not apply because this one would mean image has to be the next sibling after my head, directly below my head. But if I want it to apply to the next or subsequent siblings, any other sibling that is after H2, regardless of how many are at the top, I'll now replace this plus with a tile. Tile is the key just before one on your keyboard, like that, tile. So you can see when I put tile, it means that it's going to apply that style regardless of how far below this is from the H2 that I'm talking about. So from that particular H2, I have a paragraph and not an MG. So when I put that subsequent siblings, which is this, it means anything that is a direct child of H2, so long as they are brothers and sisters and they are after this, then those styles should be able to apply. And that is how combinator selectors work. Any question? Remember, these selectors are very important. As we are going to be writing our styles, we are going to be basing them on these selectors. How do you want to select a DOM element on your page so that you apply appropriate styles to it as appropriate? All right. Any question up to that point? I was told last time that I'm moving too fast. I hope that I am not moving too fast today. Okay. Any question? And I hope you can still be able to get me. So maybe you can just acknowledge that you are still reaching me out so that now we can continue. Can you hear me? Yeah, Lati, thank you. If you can hear me, awesome. So that is the second category of selectors. Now we also have the third category of selectors. So we said we have, sorry, I'll just put them here. We have the descendant selector. We also have the child selector. And for the child selector, we use the greater than, like that. So the one on the left will be the parent, the one on the right will be the child. Then the third one, I think we have looked at is the combinator selector. Actually, all of them, these ones are so we have descendant, we have child, we have next sibling, which we were using plus, and then we have the last one, which was subsequent sibling, which we are using a tilde. Tilde is the key just before one on your keyboard. That's the sibling. So that is the second category of selectors, which is combinator selectors. The third one, the third type of selector we have in CSS are what we call pseudo selectors. So we have pseudo selectors. Pseudo selectors like that. Now pseudo selectors also come into. We have pseudo class selectors. Pseudo class selectors, and these ones are the ones that determine the status of an element. So these ones determine the status of an element. Okay, the status of an element. Like for example, I'll use an anchor element to be able to show us the different status of elements and how pseudo class selectors actually work. So let's just do that. So I'll create another file here and I'll call it pseudo selectors.html. Okay, so I'll close that up. I'll put emits. I'll say pseudo selectors. So I'll discard that. Then I will launch this page now so that appears on my screen. Perfect. Then here we can put, let's put navigation. Then let's put multiple links. So I'll just say http www.google.com. I'll simply say here Google. Then I'll put another one. No, just inside nav. It's a good practice to put them inside navigation if you're going to use them as part of navigation. This will be Yahoo, Yahoo. Which other website do you know that's popular? Facebook. Facebook. Then you also have Instagram. So we have Instagram. Now, I'll add a property here. Targets. I want to open them in a blank window so that we are able to see how this works. So what happens is this. These links, as you can see, all of them are blue. Okay? All of them are blue by default. Okay? So if I wanted to change their color, I'll come here, I'll put my style, then I will say all the anchor, then I'll put a colon like that, then I'll say link. So any link, what do I want to do? I want the color to be, say, maroon, right? Right? So I'll say color maroon. Link rather. So sorry, I think I messed up there a bit. So here color maroon, right? So you can see all of them are going to have maroon color, right? Because that's how I'm defining the link. The status of the link, before it is visited, the color should be maroon from the default blue. So this is before it's visited. So you can see we're checking status before it's visited. That's why we're calling them pseudo selectors before it is visited. Sorry, visited like that. So before it is visited, it is maroon. Now, if I hover on it, you can see the color does not change. I want if you hover on it, the color changes to blue. So I'll say the same anchor. If you hover over it, which means you place the mouse over any link, then change the color to blue. Right? That's why we're calling them pseudo selectors. They determine the state of the element. So if I move the cursor, you can see now it becomes blue. So when you hover, it becomes blue. Right? Now, when you click on it, I want the color to change to red. So I'll say, um, I think that should be active. Yeah, it's active. Active is when you click on it and it's still processing. So I want the color to be purple rather. Now, after you visited it, I want the color to change to red, showing that any link that is red on your page, in some way the user has visited that link. So I'll say A visited, change the color to red, something of the sort. So now I have different status. By default, it's maroon. If you move the mouse over it, it becomes blue. If you click on it, it becomes purple. And after it has been visited, it becomes red. Where can it reach Instagram? I have absolutely no idea, but it should visit Instagram. Visited should be red. I don't know why it's not picking, but visited should, yeah, visited should be red. Active should be purple, but you get the idea. So this is what we are referring to as pseudo class selectors. They help us to determine the state of a particular element. Then we can be able to apply styles as appropriate. So if you're talking about a menu and and uh, and we want the active menu to have an underline of maybe say a green or something of that sort, then you want to apply those styles as appropriate. You want to make the font size bigger and all that kind of stuff. Let me actually demonstrate that. So for end link, I'll simply say text decoration is none. Text hyphen decoration is none. Then I want margin to be 10 pixels. 360 degrees. So I want them to have spaces between them. So you can see that makes it look nice like that. So ideally, this is how we apply styles. We apply multiple styles, not just one style, but we're going to look at all these things later on and what they do. Now, when you hover on it, I want the underline to come back. So when you hover, I want text decoration, I want underline. Then maybe I want to make the font size bigger, just an effect. So font size, maybe say 2rem. So it means it's going to be bigger when I hover over it. Just observe. So you can see, is that 2rem? Let me make it, it's font size, not font family. So when I hover on it, you can see now the font becomes bigger. Something of the sort. So this is the state, and you can see I now don't have to struggle with very complex selectors because if I'm talking about a link, I can be able to examine the status of the link and I can be able to apply style as appropriate, right? Awesome. That is, those are pseudo class selectors. Then you also have pseudo element selectors. So for pseudo element selectors, so here I was using pseudo class selectors. So here now, let's talk about pseudo element selectors. Pseudo element selectors. Now, pseudo element selectors are the ones that helps us to determine uh, 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 the position. It's more like state. It's not state, yes, but more like how we'll select element based on their position. It could be something like the first, the last, are they at the odd part, at the even part, and that kind of stuff. So let me just give us a classic example with a table. Let's say we have a table and we want to format this table in such a way that it is striped, which means we want to be able to read this table very, very easily. So I can simply come here and say create a table. Then that table should have a table head which has three table heads, th times 3. Then I also want that table to have a table body, and I want that table body to have 3 rows like that. That is how you, this is how you type code fast. So you can see that table is actually there, it's only that it doesn't have. So I can say here number, admission number, then student name. All right. Then here, of course, on the table, I have 3 TDs like that. So here I can have one, I can have DIT 001. Then maybe this is Robert Marsden, something of the sort. So I'll remove these two. I'll repeat this 4 times or 5. Yeah, 4 times. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Maybe change this one to 2, this one to 3, this one to 4, and this one to 5. Now, this is the table, so maybe I can change the name. I can change this data to 3, 4, and 5. So maybe this is Mary Jane. It's Peter Parker. Peter Parker. This is Sonic Hedgehog. And this is Tom and Jerry. Something like that, right? So it makes difference. Now, let me, I might want to style this table in such a way that the first row has a different color. So what I want to do is, I want to go to the table, I want to go to the T-body, and I want to select the first row, okay? So the first row, maybe I want the font to be bold, right? So what I'll do here, I'll say pseudo pseudo element selector like that. So I'll come to my table. If I put space, it means I want the siblings. So inside my table, I want all TRs, that is the first child, like that. So first child means go to the table, get the TR that is the first child. Okay? Then from there, I want maybe say I want to change the color to blue. I want to change the font color to blue. So of course I'll get the first child, then I'll get all the TDs. Then from the TDs, I'll change the color to blue. Yeah, that should, yeah, it's not double, it's one. So you can see on the table, I've only gone and gotten the TR, but the first child. So if I wanted the last one to have the blue color, I would simply say here, last child, last. So you can see only the last one will have that. So this is also a pseudo selector. Okay, that's a pseudo element selector. Sorry. Okay, then you can also want the odd ones and the even ones to have different colors. So you can say the odd ones. So instead of last child, I'll say odd. So if it is odd, odd should actually be double. Mm, yeah, odd should be yeah, odd should be double. Yeah, odd and even should work out. Let me just check odd. Odd should work out. Odd should work out because I might want to have them in odd. Oh, TR. Yeah, odd should work. Let me just look up the syntax. Actually, it should be nth child odd. So you can see if I put nth child odd, then it means 1, 3, and 5 are the ones that are going to have that color. So if I wanted the same for even, I would come here. So if I want the even ones to be red, I would come here and say even. Then I say red. So you can see the odds are going to be blue, the evens are going to be red. Now, this one we can, instead of using that color, we can just use background. Sorry, like that. So you can see, again, I've just used the table and I've used table row. I should have used table, then go to T body. So it only affects the body like that. So you can see it does not interfere with the heading. So you can see the more specific you get with this, the better it becomes for you to be able to select some of these elements. So that is pseudo element selectors, and you can see this is actually very, very powerful because now it helps us to be able to select things based on status. Are they the first child? Are they the last child? Are they an odd child? Are they an even child? And all those kinds of stuff. So it makes it a little bit easier for us to be able to apply or select elements so that styling them becomes a little bit easy for us as we move along. Okay. Now I know the class time is only 4 minutes left, so maybe I think I'll take a break at that. I will share this material with us so that you can be able to practice. And as you can see, the way I mentioned, this is going to be a very, very important. The selectors are going to be very, very important because they are the ones that help us to determine what we are picking from the page. Then from there, we can apply the various styles to it. Now, once we know that, then the rest of the things are what in the pack because they're just properties that you need to learn. What properties are there, what can be changed, and everything else falls into place. We still have two more selectors left. That is the attribute selectors. Then from there, we can now go to other things like fonts and colors and images and opacity and all those kinds of things that you can apply to our document to make it look beautiful and attractive. And from there, then we'll now move to JavaScript. Then we're going to see how we can actually be able to move these elements automatically without necessarily refreshing the page. Maybe create forms, have visitors input some data, validate the data, store that data in a file, retrieve it, and those kinds of things. We'll see how that works out. I don't know if there is any question up to this point. I would want to stop the class at this. Then, of course, we are meeting again tomorrow. We're going to start with the attribute selectors, and please try to come as early as you possibly can, so that we also don't waste a lot of time. Because today I think we lost about 20 minutes or so. That should have been enough for us to tackle the attribute selectors. But nonetheless, let's try and be on time tomorrow so that we also cover as much as we possibly could. Remember, I said we are far behind and we need to move with speed. So even though we're going to use the 3 Saturdays that we have to make up for at least another 6 classes or so, still we could be a little bit lagging behind, but it will give us an edge in terms of trying to cover what is necessary. So I think I'll give us an opportunity to ask any question or comment. Then from there we can have a close at this class. Then we see each other again tomorrow. You can use the chat box if you are not in a position to speak. Then I'll just be able to read the chat and address as appropriate. And also to mention, I've only seen a few assignments from different people. So most of the people have not submitted the assignment. So kindly please make sure that you submit your assignment on time. Otherwise, it becomes a bit of a challenge for us to be able to award you marks based on what you need to have been doing. Okay. So I'm not seeing any questions or comments. So I want to believe that everybody is comfortable. I think we can have a stop at that. Then we'll meet again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you and have a blessed day.